smaller people are relatively stronger. If you see somebody who is 50 kilos, bench pressing 100 kilos, double body weight, it's impressive, but it's not unheard of. But you're not going to see somebody who's 200 kilos benching 400 kilos. And there's actually a physical, biological reason for this. And you see this in the animal kingdom too. An ant can lift like 20 their body weight, but you're not going to see that from an elephant. Your strength is largely influenced by your cross-sectional area. Just think of a cube. Let's say it's 1 by 1 by 1. The cross-sectional area is 1 meter squared and the volume is 1 meter cubed. Now double it, you've got 2 by 2. The cross-sectional area now is 4, but the volume now is 8 meters cubed. The volume increases at a faster rate than the cross-sectional area. You see the same thing with humans. The bigger you get, the more your weight is going to increase relative to your cross-sectional area, which is your strength.
Do you know Jujimufu?
Oh yeah.
He's giant and he has this amazing flexibility with his splits, so he's probably pretty strong in his legs too.
Oh yeah, there's videos of him squatting gargantuan amounts of weight, and it's kind of like a chicken and egg thing. The more mobile you are, the deeper you can get, which forces the muscles to work harder in a lot of exercises. But the stronger you are, the more mobile you can be.
The way that Logan Paul and those guys used to do vines was, instead of wearing a wig and being like, I'm a girl, they would put like a shoe on their head. It's simple, don't overthink it. If you start the video like that, people give you a lot of benefit of the doubt, and then you can kind of do whatever. There's a certain charm to videos being imperfect. If you're on TikTok, the really high-res video that pops up, usually it's a Sprite app. Your mind is just like, you eventually learn, like, forget it, just keep going.
It's gotta be amazing to take morning walks in Sweden. The nature is so beautiful.
It's very cold.
Yeah, I could imagine, yeah.
During summer, and when it's not that cold, it's okay, but Sweden is very hilly.
Denmark is just flat, completely flat. We have nothing. How long is the winter in Sweden?
All year.
All year round?
The way the seasons work, they have changed a lot. Oh, we started getting snow in November, December, but now you get snow in like January. Like the seasons shift past our clocks.
I wonder if that's a cause of global warming too, or is that natural?
I just think the angle the world rotates is changing the way the weather happens.
Bodybuilders need to be shredded because they need to get on stage, and that is a component of what they're being judged on. Powerlifters, as long as they don't get so out of shape that they move to the next weight class, having some extra fat on their body is probably not a bad thing. With powerlifting, you just want to be as strong as you can. There's no aesthetic component to it. You basically just want to fill out a weight class, put on as much muscle mass as you can. And a great way to put on muscle mass is to be in a calorie surplus. It's a much better environment to stack muscle on.
The Piers Morgan interview. I don't even know if you could call it an interview. It was a complete shit show.
When I'm doing the bit, bingo, he's like barely happy to let that slide. There's like 2 or 3 times that I go to like make a very serious point in the midst of the comedy, and that is when he interrupts me. Genuinely, he really dislikes vegans.
His show is more for entertainment, I suppose, than actual debate.
Alex Hormozi, he gained 35 pounds in 6 weeks by eating 6,000 calories a day and working out 2 times a day, 6 days out of the week. I tested that and like got pretty similar results to Alex Hormozi. In 6 weeks, I still ended up gaining 30 pounds, which is crazy.
Irwin, he won a world title on 7.5 grams of mushrooms. I've seen people have outer body experiences with 1 gram, 2 grams, but 3.5 is usually the threshold. Mark was at 7.5 and he climbed into a ring and fought someone. That's enough to put most people into orbit.
When I turned 20, I said 20 to 30, I will try anything and everything. I'm gonna sacrifice this body and my time, and I'm just gonna work. I tried to build the widest plate, failed at a lot of things, but then at the age of 30, I'm gonna start taking stuff out of those plates and start building them up. Just doing a few things, but doing them well. And from age 40 and up, just to give and teach as much as I can.
A lot of times people think that being disciplined is all about forcing yourself to do something you don't want to do. That's not discipline, that's obedience. It's completely the opposite. An obedient person does what they're told to do, regardless of whether or not it's the best thing to do. Discipline is when you look at your circumstances and you're like, you know, based on this and this and my experience says this, I'm better off doing this. Sometimes it could be saying, all right, usually I do 3 sets, but today feeling great and awesome, let's do 5. But other days it could be like, man, it's not working for me. My elbows are killing me. Set of 3, I'm just gonna do 1 set of everything, get the blood flowing, and then go home. That's not being weak. That's called discipline, because you're making better choices for yourself. When you know the objectives you're trying to go after, you can make far better disciplined decisions on what's actually better for you, rather than just staying on this straight and narrow that someone has arbitrarily guessed is the best thing for you.
There's a thing called polyphasic sleep where people like adjust their sleep cycles to be different than the usual like 8 hours at night. So the most intense one is called the Uberman sleep cycle. This guy did it for a long time. He would sleep 20 minutes every 4 hours. In total, he was only getting 2 hours of sleep per day, less than a minute, and he would automatically be in his REM sleep cycle. So he was kind of skipping a lot of the phases that he felt were less important for recovery. A lot of other people think those phases are extremely important. And he was feeling sustained on that.
Fun fact, there are some places on Earth where gravity is a little bit smaller. Earth is not like fully round. So the distance of like center of Earth is different dependent on where you are.
Howard Stern, he was on this other platform where he had to do these commercials. And it was so funny because he's known for being very unfiltered. He would say crazy things and really have outrageous conversations. And then he, part of his job was reading these ridiculous ads. But he, my friend, would totally embrace it as part of just the kabuki theater of life. So he would go, oh, this pasta, it cooks up al dente every time. It's the best pasta ever. But he said it wholeheartedly, and it was absolutely ridiculous and wonderful. So here's a game. I came up with this idea of going, let me look at my happiness. How happy am I? What's going on there? So I played this game where I basically would track my happiness. An alarm would go off every hour or whatever. On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy do I feel? Oh, like I'm a 7. And then an hour later, I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm a 2. And then an hour later, oh, I'm an 8. But I tracked it. And just by tracking it, by the end of the week, I realized my numbers were going up. Just by noticing them. That was really interesting. Week 2, whatever I check in at, let me see if there's something I can do to bring up the number. So if I'm a 2, let's see if I can get to 2.5. A deep breath, move my body, whatever. And then once I started doing that, my numbers got even higher.
Wow.
And literally after about a week of that game that I played, I've been on this consistent, I average 9. Something happens and I'll dip or whatever.
I try to tell modern athletes in mixed martial arts today, you guys have essentially like a generic rule set you all work off of. You all have typical type of glove. When I started fighting, we didn't have gloves. The rules were always different and usually open-ended. Training gear and equipment, none of that existed. So we had to make do with whatever we had. Now we have structures in place where you can go to your local schools and they have an MMA program. There is a pretty clear-cut path. I really enjoy that. It promotes and keeps the sport growing and alive, but also at the same time, it loses that sense of adventure. It's the same thing that made men want to get on ships and travel around the world, taking that step towards the unknown.
Our muscles are driven by our nervous system. So training the nervous system is a far more direct way to get the muscles into the condition we want and need them to be. And one of the quickest and easiest ways to do that is with the discipline of overcoming isometrics. That's when you're putting force against something that you can't move. If you got into a squat rack and there's a barbell about chest height and you load it up with like a gazillion pounds that you couldn't possibly lift, and then you just push your back against it as hard as you possibly could. That's an overcoming isometric. You're always matching force and resistance equally. So the harder you push into that immovable force, the more it pushes back and vice versa. So the beauty of overcoming isometrics is that it is a very quick and very efficient way to train your nervous system to use your muscles better. And the more confident the muscles are, the easier they are to stretch, the easier they are to use at elongated lengths, and the more mobile they're inevitably going to be.
People have a hard time seeing the long-term benefits.
And that's why I'm a very big fan of using instant gratification for our benefit rather than our detriment. So if you came to me and you're like, I hate going to the gym, but I love going outside, I'm like, well, then we won't go to the gym. Let's go outside, because we want things that make us feel good now. So that way we have the motivation to stick with the habits on a day-to-day basis. But if you're basing things solely on long-term gratification, and the instant gratification is lacking, you're probably not going to be motivated to stick to it. And you can tell yourself it'll be worth it down the road, it'll be worth it 10 years from now or whatever, but it also needs to be worth it today. Every time I jump on that pull-up bar, there's at least some part of me that's like, I kind of don't want to do this. But there's a much bigger part of me that certainly is all about it and is glad I'm doing it. And if I ever do find myself chronically like, I just don't want to do this, let's look at why. And chances are very good, I probably shouldn't be doing it, because a loss of motivation is our emotional subconscious literally telling us there's no good reason to force yourself to do something you don't want to do when you don't have to do it, and you got other options that are probably going to be a better option for you.
when you actually try different workout routines, usually you'll find that almost anything works if you just like do it exactly right. There are things that like I think are inescapable of like calories in, calories out. You're gonna need to actually lift weights to build muscle, but like
The splits and the amount of reps might make a marginal difference in the long term. When I practiced the front split, I used to do it every single day, and I did not make progress because I didn't realize that you need to recover as well when you stretch.
Oh, yeah. Most people actually use stretching as a recovery modality, which is funny because stretching itself also causes fatigue. Doing stretches before displaying your strength, you will have lower strength in a similar way as doing a set of exercise before displaying the strength in this set.
People were saying that the last thing that AI is going to replace are the creative jobs, and now it is unstoppable.
Yeah, my friend is an artist. He had this gig where he was going to design this band's logo. They were talking for weeks and weeks and weeks, and he mentioned that he likes to use some AI generator to help generate ideas, and then he makes the art from that. And the band was like, oh, that's cool, we can play with that. And they eventually made a design that they liked, and they didn't hire him.
Wow.
Which is like really crappy, you know?
Yeah.
Did you ever watch South Park?
Yeah, favorite show.
PC Principal. The first episode with him, there's a shot of the farmers, and they're like, uh-oh, looks like things are getting all PC again. Last time it lasted about 7 years. I bet you it's been that long because it does feel like people are kind of over it, and we start back at the beginning. I feel like we're at that turning point right now, which is great. Fun feeling sad. Why are you making yourself feel sad about things?
Could you explain the Stoned Ape theory?
Terence McKenna theorized that there's a leap in evolution where our brains doubled in size. We went from being basically monkeys in trees to savanna, and we started chasing around big cows and things like that. We would follow them and pick up their poop and eat the bugs out of cow shit. Grows psilocybin mushrooms. Now imagine being the first monkey to eat a mushroom and start to have the thought of talk or how to throw or how to get fire on a lower primate monkey brain. You constantly give it psilocybin over an extended period of time. The brain theoretically grew and evolved into what we have now as humans.